Welcome back to Global Lens. The Democrats swept the first major election of President Donald Trump's second term. In a night marked by historic first, New York City elected Zohran Mamdani as its first South Asian and Muslim mayor. The 34-year-old secured 50% of the vote. He is the city's youngest mayor since 1892. Mamdani beat Andrew Cuomo, the state's former Democratic governor. Trump referred to Mamdani as a communist and claimed that America lost a little bit of its sovereignty. Meanwhile, it was also a breakthrough night for women in the Democratic Party. Virginia elected Abigail Spanberger as its first female governor. Detroit voted in Mary Sheffield as its first woman mayor. She secured 77% of the vote. Democratic candidate Ghazal Hashmi made history as the first Indian American and first Muslim to win statewide office in Virginia. The celebrations came amid a deepening political crisis in Washington. President Trump took to social media to blame Republican losses on the ongoing federal government shutdown, which is now the longest in U.S. history. The shutdown has entered its 37th day, surpassing previous record of 35 days that was set during President Trump's first term. The U.S. Senate has rejected the funding package 14 times so far. The stalemate has disrupted millions of lives, from flight delays to federal workers left without pay. The U.S. Transport Secretary has announced a 10% reduction in flight capacity across 40 major airports starting Friday. According to Bloomberg, the shutdown is costing the economy an estimated $15 billion each week. Let's listen in to what Donald Trump said.
If you read the pollsters, the shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans, and that was a big factor. And they say that I wasn't on the ballot was the biggest factor. But I don't know about that, but I was honored that they said that. Remember, I've said we will never have a socialist elected to any post in our country. I used to say that, and I was right. We skipped socialist and we put in a communist instead. That didn't work out too well. As I've warned for many years, our opponents are hell-bent on turning America into a communist Cuba or socialist Venezuela, and you see what happened to those places.
All right, we continue our conversation now with former Assistant USTR and Senior Advisor at USISPF, Mark Linscott. Mark, how do you think this election result will impact Donald Trump's economic policies, especially the tariff strategy? Do you see some reduction in rhetoric, some recalibration after this result?
I don't see a recalibration in terms of tariffs. The results clearly were a setback for the Republicans. They weren't surprising. We're talking about two blue states, generally blue states, or at least with respect to Virginia, a purple state that voted Democratic. So it was not a big surprise. I think the extent to the extent of the wins by the Democrats in those states were significant, but I don't think it's going to lead to a recalibration in tariff policy or in trade policy more broadly. If we were to see an economic downturn that is attributed to the tariffs, or an increase in inflation that is attributed to the tariffs, then we would see a recalibration. But until that actually happens, I don't think politically the president, who has been so behind tariffs for so much of his political career, is going to reverse course.
Right. Do you expect, Mark, that in the run-up to the midterm elections, when things will now start heating up, will tariffs be an issue? Will the Democrats make this a point that these tariffs are slowing down the U.S. economy?
I think that more broadly, they will be making the case in the run-up to the midterm elections on the economy, that the economy is not looking so great, when the president, during the campaign, promised that things would immediately be different and be better on the economic front. Tariffs and trade policy are a part of the economy, so I expect the Democrats will be quite vocal on the impacts of the tariffs, particularly if we see signs of increases in inflation. If the GDP numbers are dropping, they will definitely be blaming tariffs for that. And assailing the Trump administration for putting those tariffs into place.
Right. I would also like to ask you, do you also expect this global uncertainty around tariffs to start settling down in the months to come? Will that be important for Donald Trump to, yes, he has started a tariff war at the start of his second term, but now when it comes to the midterm election, do you think he may want to settle things down, show some victory soon, and that's where India may come in? He may want to show a victory to people?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point and question, Parikshit. To what extent are we going to see more stability on the tariff and trade front? We may not see elimination of tariffs. We may not see significant reductions in the tariffs that have already been imposed, even if the Supreme Court finds them illegal under IEEPA. We may see those tariffs just recast under different legislative authority. So I don't think we'll see necessarily a reduction in tariffs, but we may see a more stable situation with tariffs. And we've already been seeing that. We had the reciprocal tariffs, the final reciprocal tariffs announced on August 1st. There have been then trade negotiations to put those in legally binding form with multiple countries, but they've been staying steady. India's the exception, having a very high rate because it has two components, a reciprocal tariff and the penalty tariff associated with Russian oil. So that may be a factor. If there is widespread continuing backlash against tariffs, perhaps another trade deal, even a bigger trade deal than those announced with other countries, one with India, could be something that the administration finds very, very attractive. So, I think it could be a contributing factor in the continuing negotiations with India.
Right. Politically, how does this high tariff strategy for India serve Donald Trump's ends? The reason why I ask that, he has somehow signed trade agreements or statements of intent with most Asian economies. With China also, there is a truce that we are looking at right now. Russian oil was nowhere on the table when he spoke to the Chinese president. Why do you think India is being treated differently?
That's another good question. It's really tough to answer because it speaks to the motivations of the president himself and other members of the administration. Clearly, there's a desire in the administration to see the conflict in Ukraine, end in some kind of agreement. And the Russian economy is sustained by its exports of oil. Both China and India are major purchases or have been over the last few years. Why China's not been targeted and India has been is an important question. It probably comes down to leverage. China has much more leverage. It's been exerting that leverage in response to the tariffs. It has the ability, like no other country in the world, to respond to Trump's tariffs in ways that really hurt the United States economically. So, I think that leverage has probably been one of the main factors why there's not been a tariff imposed against China with respect to its Russian oil purchases.
Right. Now, when it comes to the political relationship between India and the United States, looking at what has happened with this election result, do you think Donald Trump has enough mind space to give his attention to a trade deal with India right now? Do you think his immediate priority would be falling approval ratings, this election result, which has been swept by the Democrats? He criticized Zohran Mamdani, but Zohran Mamdani came out victorious. Do you think this defeat would be playing more on his mind? And it's possible that this political situation in the US may just force Donald Trump to put his attention to to domestic matters rather than what happens with India. There is no Quad summit happening, at least as of now. There is no word on a Trump visit. Trump was supposed to visit by October or November. That also doesn't seem to be happening.
Well, you are right. There are competing priorities in any administration, and certainly with respect to the Trump administration. There's a lot on his plate, and we have midterm elections coming next year, and that's going to be a priority. That said, trade and tariffs will always be a high priority in this administration. And India is one of our biggest trading partners. So, I don't think it's falling off the agenda. I wouldn't predict that it will fall off the agenda at all, or out of the mind of the president. I think there will be continuing negotiations, and at some point in time, when it appears that everything's been wrapped up for a phase one agreement, the president will likely be in a position to announce that, along with Prime Minister Modi. This is a bilateral agreement. They are negotiating. There are interests on both sides that need to be addressed for there to be conclusion of an agreement. So I don't think it will fall off the table. I think that there still are good prospects for an agreement in the near future.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark Linscott, for joining us with that comprehensive perspective on why the US-India trade deal is taking time, the impact of the Supreme Court tariff hearing, and also the US election results and their impact on Donald Trump's economic and tariff strategy. Thanks once again for being with us. A quick look now at other global stories we are tracking.